I used to be a tower controller. For 27 years, I watched planes lift off and land, some trembling in storms, others gliding in as if the sky wanted them back. The first thing you learn in that job is that silence can mean one of two things. Everything is fine, or everything is about to go terribly wrong. It had been 5 years since I stepped out of the tower for the last time. I still woke up at 4:45 every morning, still listened to air traffic radio on my old scanner like someone checking an old lover's Facebook page. Routine is a hard thing to bury. So when I boarded Flight 913 to Sao Paulo, a red-eye out of Houston, I wasn't expecting much. Some sleep, a dull movie, maybe a ginger ale with too much ice. I chose the window seat. Habit. I like seeing the horizon curve. We took off into a moonless night. The hum of the engines merged with the low murmur of strangers pretending not to be human. Reading, scrolling, dozing. I closed my eyes. That was when I heard it. A voice, muted, staticky, crackled through the cabin speakers. It wasn't the captain. It wasn't any in-flight announcement. I glanced around. No one else reacted. Romeo Alpha, descend and hold pattern, tower copy, repeat, repeat, don't acknowledge. I sat up straight. The voice, tinny, distorted, wasn't random. It was familiar. I used to say that human voices have fingerprints. You hear enough of them, and you can pick one out of 1,000. This one belonged to Marcus Leon, my old supervisor, dead 10 years now. I stared at the seatback screen. Static, no flight path, no altitude, just a flickering black and white rectangle. I unbuckled, made my way to the galley, asked the flight attendant if the PA was malfunctioning. She looked at me, smile fixed, eyes not blinking. "We don't use the PA at night, sir. Unless it's an emergency." I returned to my seat, checked my scanner app. No signal, no tower frequency. Then the voice came again, louder this time. "Flight 715, you are not cleared for takeoff. Repeat. Return to apron. Return immediately." That was my voice. The voice I used when I was calm, but someone else was panicking. And then I remembered Flight 715 was the one that crashed in '98. Hydraulic failure, all dead. All except me. I denied the takeoff, but they'd pushed it through. Said it was political, VIP, on board. I'd quit the next year. My palms were wet. I looked around the cabin. Now everyone else seemed asleep. Or pretending. I wasn't sure anymore what this flight was. Or if it had ever taken off. Tower of silence. At 3:06 a.m., I felt the plane bank slightly. Just enough to make your stomach tug. I glanced out the window. No city lights, no stars, just black. The seatbelt sign was still on. The attendants were gone. Not seated, not walking, gone. I got up again, walked down the aisle. Every screen was black. No one moved. Their eyes were closed, but I wasn't sure they were asleep. When I reached the front of the plane, the cockpit door was ajar. Not open, just slightly, enough. I pushed it. Inside, there were no pilots, no instruments lit, just a dull green glow from one panel, flickering. I stepped inside, my breath fogged. It was cold. A headset lay on the captain's seat. I picked it up. "Houston Tower, come in. This is Flight 913. Repeat, come in." Static. Then, "You were not cleared." The voice again. "Marcus." My voice. Then someone else's. All layered like old recordings warped by time. You could have stopped it. Protocol isn't everything. Passengers are not numbers. I dropped the headset. The intercom speakers crackled. I ran back to my seat. Everyone was awake now, but silent, eyes open, staring at nothing, as if waiting for instructions. The plane began to descend. Outside, I saw lights, a runway. But it wasn't Houston, wasn't Sao Paulo. It was the old military airstrip near Tucuruí. Decommissioned in 1999. I'd cleared my last emergency landing there before I quit. We touched down hard, the kind of landing that feels like a second chance or a warning. No brakes screeched, no engines reversed. We just glided to a stop. And then, silence. The lights went off. The cabin door opened with a hiss. One by one, the passengers stood and left. No bags, no questions. I stayed behind. I looked down and saw a manifest in the seat pocket. Flight 913, list of names. Mine wasn't on it. At the bottom, someone had scribbled a line. "How long can you stay in the air before it's time to come down?" I followed the others into the dark. I follow the thought of Werner Herzog, who once said, "The universe is monstrously indifferent to the presence of man." That night, I understood what it means to be unheard in a space built entirely for voices. There's something about airports at night that makes you feel like you're already halfway between places. That's why I chose the red eye to Los Angeles. I hadn't seen my daughter in 6 years. I missed 2 birthdays, a graduation, and 1 failed custody hearing. But tonight, I was going to fix that. The terminal was almost empty. My boarding pass said Gate 44A, but the signs felt off, like they hadn't been updated in years. Some monitors blinked static. A faint chemical smell lingered in the air, disinfectant or decay. Still, the staff scanned me through with polite smiles that didn't quite touch their eyes. I stepped onto Flight 806 with a Starbucks cup of coffee and a heart full of apologies. It was a small jet, maybe 30 seats, the kind used for regional hops. No logos, no music, just that sterile hum of pressurized air and the quiet resignation of late-night travelers. I didn't care, as long as it got me to her. The plane lifted off with a shudder that felt mechanical and reluctant. No in-flight announcements, just the soft growl of engines and dim yellow lights overhead. The window beside me was dark, reflecting only my own tired face. I must have dozed off. When I woke up, something was wrong. No one was speaking, not the passengers, not the flight attendants. I couldn't even hear the engines anymore. There was a silence so dense it rang in my ears. The cabin looked off, too clean, too still, like it had been staged by someone who had never actually been on a plane. I reached for my phone. No signal. The screen flickered and died in my hands. The seat-back screen in front of me showed only a frozen image. My daughter as a child, blurry, playing with a red kite. I turned to the man beside me. He was smiling, not at me, just smiling. Eyes fixed forward like a screensaver. "Are we landing soon?" I asked. He didn't respond. I got up, walked the aisle. Every passenger stared ahead, eyes wide open, silent, still. Their chests didn't seem to rise or fall. In the galley, a flight attendant stood with her hands folded. Her uniform looked outdated, wrinkled. Her name tag was blank. "I'm going to see my daughter," I said. "She's waiting for me." She nodded. "Of course. That's why you're here. Where are we? How long until—" She stepped aside and opened the cockpit door. There was no cockpit, just a blank wall, painted sky blue, like a child's mural of clouds and birds. I turned back. The aisle now felt longer. The lights flickered. For a moment, all the passengers were gone. Then they were back, but different, older, paler, some weeping silently. I collapsed into my seat. My hands trembled. I tried to focus on the image ahead, my daughter now in graduation robes, then a hospital bed, then her face turned away from me, then another image, me sitting in this same seat, crying. A message appeared beneath the image. "You missed this one too." "No," I whispered. "I'm on my way. I can still make it." I pulled open the tray table. Inside was a folder, medical record, scans, therapy notes. Her name, Sophia Mitchell. Final entry, "Do not resuscitate. Executed May 17th. That was today. I stood up again, desperate. "Please turn it around. Let me off. I didn't know." The intercom crackled. A voice spoke. "He's waking up again." Another voice. "He won't remember next time either." Then my own voice. "Tell her I was on my way." The plane banked. Outside there was no sky, just a void, colorless, absolute. I couldn't even see the wing. All the passengers now turned toward me. Their expressions weren't angry, just disappointed, hollow, familiar. I saw my mother, my brother, my ex-wife, my daughter. The plane began to descend, but the cabin stayed perfectly still. No rattling, no landing gear. We landed with a dull, empty thud, like falling into memory. The cabin lights dimmed. The emergency lights blinked blue instead of red. A side door hissed open. One by one, the passengers stood and filed out, leaving their belongings, their bodies, everything. I moved to follow, but the flight attendant blocked me. "You don't belong with them, not yet." "Where am I?" I asked, my voice barely audible. She tilted her head, smiling gently. "Still in the air, always in the air." She handed me a boarding pass. Same name, same flight number, new date, May 18th. "You'll try again tomorrow," she said. The door closed. The lights dimmed completely. I sat alone in the dark cabin. The screen in front of me flickered to life once more. My daughter, age 4, holding a red kite. Windless sky. I cried. I screamed. No one heard. The engines started again. I've always believed that silence isn't the absence of sound, just the failure to listen deep enough. Airports have their own tonal signature. Rolling wheels, half-whispered arguments, announcements spoken with fake urgency. But inside a plane? There, silence has weight. It thickens the air. I never trusted it. That's probably why I ended up in sound design. 17 years decoding the world through frequency. Buzzes, ticks, compressor hums, the subtle hissing of systems meant to stay invisible, which is how I got contracted by the airline. They needed hyper-real audio for a new flight attendant simulator. Wanted real cabin ambiance, pre-takeoff tension, mid-air stillness, the creak of metal stretched at 30,000 feet. I boarded Flight 228 to Anchorage with a portable field recorder, a modded mic, and my monitoring headset. Red eye, nearly empty. Perfect conditions. The attendants barely looked up as I passed. One handed me a sealed water bottle, eyes glassy. I took a window seat in the rear third of the plane, best spot to catch the whole resonance field. The engines began to spool. That layered growl as turbines align, it's my favorite part. I adjusted the gain and closed my eyes. At 7:32 p.m., I heard something that shouldn't have been there. A thread of distortion curled into the background noise. Then through it, voices, not cabin chatter, not crew talk. Bank left, no, left, stall, he's not responding. I checked the input levels, no overload, no external feed. Still, I marked the timestamp. Then more. Fire in engine 2, elevators failing, get them out. Each phrase burst like trapped air, escaping metal lungs. The pilot came on a moment later. Routine check-in. Except the voice from the recording wasn't his. It wasn't from this flight. I flagged a passing flight attendant. Hey, are you running any audio simulations through the cabin systems? She blinked slowly. We don't broadcast anything but PA, sir. And no drills tonight. I played back the clip. Nothing. Clean cabin tone. But I knew what I heard. Later, I ran a live spectrogram. The anomaly was clear. Interference spiking at 22.3 kilohertz. Too high for normal human speech. But they're stacked, stuttering. Were layers of voice-shaped patterns. I isolated the signal, cleaned it, amplified the spectral ghost. That's when the words came into focus. Tell my wife. Scream, crunch, static. The hairs on my arms rose. I knew that voice, not personally, but historically. Flight 712, March 3rd, 1996. Systems failure over northern Nevada. 74 dead. Black box partially recovered, just fragments made public. Fragments that matched my recording. I stood, walked the aisle. Lights buzzed with that wrong frequency, too hot, too blue. Passengers stared forward, unmoving, as if buffering. Back at my seat, the screen no longer played safety videos. It showed a cockpit cam, grainy, looping footage of turbulence alarms, a pilot's hand bracing the yoke. The intercom crackled. Brace, brace, this is not a drill. The audio came from the past, but it carried present tense fear. I looked across the aisle. A man covered his ears. We locked eyes. You hear it too? I whispered. He nodded. It always plays before the fall. Before I could respond, the lights cut. Everything dropped into black. No crash, no scream, just a shift, like falling between seconds. Then light again. Normal cabin glow, seatbelt signs on, passengers blinking, stretching. No one screamed, no one reacted, as if nothing had happened. We landed 3 hours later, or 3 minutes. I honestly couldn't tell. At the airport restroom, I leaned over the sink, splashed water on my face. Then I looked up. The mirror showed me, but not exactly. My reflection glitched. Frame skip. A half-second delay. Like someone watching me through a corrupted file. I opened the recorder. The original capture file was gone. In its place, a new clip. 17 seconds. My voice, distorted, panicked. It's coming through the walls now. Get out while you... Then, static. I've tried to replicate it since. Nothing. The anomaly's gone. But sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I hear that transmission again. Just behind the silence, I follow the thought of Brian Eno, who once said, repetition is a form of change. In sound, that's true. But on Flight 228, I learned something worse. Sometimes repetition is a warning, one that only those listening too closely ever hear. I've always hated waking up in unfamiliar places. The mind scrambles for anchors, smells, textures, light quality. But nothing about that moment made sense. My mouth tasted like metal. The light above me was too white, like hospital fluorescence, and my wrists hurt. That's when I realized I couldn't move. Seatbelt tight, not just across my waist, but crossing over my shoulders like a harness, military style, locked. The hum told me I was in the air, plane cabin, window seat. I turned slowly. The view outside showed nothing but a thick, endless white. Clouds, maybe, but static, like a glitching sky. I pressed the call button. No response. A flight attendant approached minutes later, smiling too wide, lips like wax. "You're awake?" she said. "We were worried you'd miss the landing." "Where are we going?" I asked. She tilted her head. Still disoriented. "That's normal. You had a bit too much to drink, caused a disruption. They had to restrain you." "That doesn't make sense," I said. "I don't even remember boarding." "You don't remember much," she said, voice flat now. "But you're going where you belong. Probably prison, or something like it." She walked away. I yanked at the belt. Nothing. It didn't budge. The other passengers, what few I could see, stared straight ahead. Silent, like mannequins in corporate clothing. No breathing, no blinking. The screen on the back of the seat ahead of me flickered, then glowed to life. "Welcome," it read. Then flight to sentence, run time until acknowledgement. The in-flight meal arrived without warning. A tray descended mechanically from the seat back. No hands, no announcement, just there. Gray meat, yellowed mashed something, a roll that crumbled like chalk. I chewed out of instinct. Everything tasted like leftovers from someone else's life. Bitter, tired flavors. I gagged. I caught my reflection in the metal lid of the tray. My eyes were bloodshot, but not from drink, from something older. The man beside me finally moved. "You know what this is, don't you?" he asked. "I don't." He laughed. "You do. You just haven't let yourself name it." When I turned, he was gone. Only the seat remained, sagging and darkened like something had rotted into it. I started to sweat. The flight attendants stood in the aisle now, one behind every seat. Their faces identical, hands folded, waiting. The screen buzzed again. Images appeared. A woman crying in a bathroom, a hospital bed, a newborn. My voice in grainy video. "It's not my problem," then static. I tried to speak. "I was young." Another clip. Me again stuffing clothes into a bag. Her voice. "You're not even going to hold him." I hit the screen. Nothing changed. The cabin darkened. My voice returned, whispering now from the intercom. "You're going where you belong." I felt the plane dip. Not like descent, like a plunge. My stomach lifted. The pressure was wrong. Outside the window something moved, a shape above the clouds, like a wing, but wrong. Long, bone-thin, curving toward the fuselage. I shut my eyes. Prayed. I was dreaming. A question hit me. Not from the screen, not from a voice, from somewhere deeper. What do you deserve if you knew and left anyway? If you erased someone because they scared you? Can regret count if it only comes when you're caught? I opened my eyes. The lights came on. The passengers were gone. Only me now, and the screen ahead, still playing moments I'd buried under years of work, drinks, silence. One final image appeared. A police officer in uniform. Face hidden, hand on holster. We landed. A hiss of air. Cabin door opened. The officer stood at the end of the aisle. He looked young, far, familiar. He looked like me. He looked like the son I never met. He said nothing, just held out the cuffs. Somewhere in that moment, between the stillness of the aisle and the throb in my wrists, I remembered a lyric I used to hear from a song I never paid attention to. "You'll pay for every sin you try to forget." I don't remember who sang it. Maybe no one. Maybe I made it up. But it played now, perfectly in sync with the hum of descent. And I didn't ask where we were anymore. I just stood and walked into whatever sentence was waiting. There's something about empty airports that gets under my skin, not the ones you pass through quickly. Those are just systems. But the ones that linger. Corridors with no end. PA systems calling no one. Clocks that don't tick. I've always felt they hold more than just departures. Maybe returns we don't want to admit. I was at Terminal C when it started. My ticket said Sao Paulo. 2205, Gate 7, but the screens had no such flight listed. I asked an agent. She smiled too long and said, "You've been reassigned. Gate 0. There is no Gate 0. But there it was, a plain white door at the far end of a shuttered corridor, no seating area, no coffee shop, just a sign blinking faintly. Now, boarding. Inside, the gate looked like any other. Scanner, boarding bridge. A woman in an old airline uniform took my ticket without question. "Your name is on the list," she said, her voice coated in a calm that made me nauseous. The plane looked outdated. Cracked leather seats, dark curtains, no airline branding. A steward shut the door behind me and said only, "Welcome back." "Back from where?" I asked. He didn't respond. As the plane took off, there was no pressure, no lift, no thrust against my spine. I looked outside. Dense cloud cover like thick wool, motionless. No stars, no city lights, just blank whiteness that seemed too heavy to be sky. I couldn't remember checking in. The cabin was nearly empty. A couple sleeping in silence. A woman reading a book upside down. Ahead of me, a man quietly weeping, mouth open but soundless. Everyone locked in place like poorly posed mannequins. Behind me, I thought I saw someone standing in the aisle, unmoving. But when I turned again, the space was empty. I've always believed that the eeriest thing about flying isn't the altitude. It's the trust. You sit, suspended in metal, pretending you aren't. You eat, sleep, and pretend movement doesn't cost anything. I never liked that lie. The steward placed a tray in front of me. I hadn't asked for food. I hadn't seen a cart. The smell was evocative. It smelled like childhood birthdays I never attended, hospital hallways, cheap cologne, a drawer I once opened in my father's house and never forgot. The food tasted like memories you'd never talk about. It was warm and dull, like comfort that had gone sour with time. As I ate, I felt something tightens in my chest, a small pressure, like guilt rediscovered. Then the screen in front of me turned on without touch. Personal archive, auto playback. It started with a photo, my sister at our father's funeral. I was in the back, jacket still on, ready to leave. Then an audio clip. My mother crying on the phone, asking if I'd come home for Christmas. My voice. Maybe. I'll see. The image flickered, then jumped. My old apartment. A woman in the kitchen, holding a letter. The tremor in her hand. My suitcase already zipped. Then another voice. "You're really going through with it?" I tried to turn it off. There were no buttons. That's when I knew this wasn't a flight. It was a reckoning. The questions began, unspoken but invasive. Why didn't I answer the messages? Was it truly exhaustion or just cowardice masquerading as practicality? How many absences can be excused before they become intention? Is regret supposed to come with punishment Or is the delay part of the price? The steward returned. His face had changed. He looked like David, an old friend I ghosted after he told me about his illness. Then like my father on the day I left for college and never really came back. The face kept shifting. Familiar, then wrong, then familiar again. "You're going home," he said. "You just don't know which one." I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice cracked. Nothing came out, only a thin rasp. He smiled, and for a moment I saw my own face on his. The intercom buzzed. Then came music, familiar chords hollowed out by the cheap cabin speakers, an instrumental version of The Sound of Silence. I laughed. Software rotten. My voice felt far away from my body. "Hello, darkness, my old friend?" The line circled in my head, not like a song, but like a sentence handed down, a message in disguise. The descent began, but not like landing, like falling, a long slide into something slow and final. Outside, no city appeared, no grid of lights, just a flat expanse of ashen fog, indistinct and infinite. A flicker in the corner of the screen showed my childhood bedroom. Then the day I emptied it. Then the text I didn't send. The visit I delayed until it was no longer needed. Then came a thought I couldn't stop. What if this flight isn't toward a destination, but away from the last place I could have turned back? How far can you run from a version of yourself before you're just circling above it, waiting for fuel to run out? Maybe the worst place to arrive is the one you made by leaving everywhere else. The aircraft landed with no jolt, no brakes, just stillness. The door opened, no stairs. They say you can tell a lot about someone by what they pack. But I've always believed it's the things people leave behind that speak louder. The flight was uneventful, routine, that liminal space between two cities where nothing really happens except time gently eroding memory. I arrived at the airport just past midnight, the last passenger off Flight 644 from Denver. The baggage carousel was almost still. A few weary travelers dragged their suitcases away in silence. I waited and waited. Then I saw it, an old brown suitcase, scuffed along the corners, duct tape over one side. It looped around the carousel once, twice. No one reached for it. My own luggage never arrived. I went to the desk. The attendant clicked around bored until she shrugged. "Your tag was never scanned at origin. Happens." "So, what do I do?" I asked. She pointed at the orphaned bag circling behind me. "Sometimes passengers grab the wrong case. Could be yours." It wasn't, but I took it anyway. The hotel room was quiet. Too quiet. One of those corporate chain places that all smell like cold laundry and faint citrus. I opened the suitcase out of spite, more than curiosity, ready to prove it wasn't mine. Inside, a black coat I recognized, a notebook filled with sketches I remember drawing, receipts in my name. But for places I've never been, restaurants in cities I'd never visited, movie tickets to films I never saw, photos, dozens of them. Me, standing beside people I couldn't name, at parties, in parks, in front of a house I didn't recognize, holding a child I don't remember meeting. The photos were real, creased, time-stamped, textured. A letter sat at the bottom of the case. My name on the envelope. Inside, a single page, handwritten. Same writing as mine. You chose not to follow through, but some part of you did. The room felt colder. I rechecked the tag on the suitcase. My name. First and last. The barcode was torn, but the numbers matched the last 4 digits of my old ID. I sat down, stared at the photos. Why couldn't I remember them? Had I lost time? Was this some elaborate prank? A doppelganger? A glitch? Or worse? Had I made a choice once long ago that split something open? I thought about the cafe I almost opened in Montreal, the woman I left after the second miscarriage, the phone call from my brother I ignored that night in 2015. What if there was no single timeline? What if each choice had been packed up and stored somewhere? The hotel phone rang. "Sir," said a man's voice, flat and expressionless, "we've located your original bag. Please come to baggage services, sub-level 3. I didn't know there was a sub-level 3. Most don't. The line went dead. I followed the signs, but none said sub-level 3. I found an unmarked door behind the baggage claim area. A keypad blinked. When I reached for it, the door clicked open. A hallway, narrow, lit like a walk-in freezer. The walls were lined with suitcases, rows and rows, hundreds, maybe thousands. Some pristine, others broken, oozing forgotten lives. A man stood behind a small desk. He looked like me, only older. Or maybe he just looked tired in a way I hadn't yet allowed myself to look. He gestured to a luggage cart. On it, 3 suitcases, all mine. "This one," he said, pointing to the first, "is who you became. The second, who you tried to be. The third, who you walked away from." I stared. The air felt heavy. My chest tightened. "You can reclaim one," he said. "The others will be stored indefinitely." I asked, "What happens if I choose wrong?" He tilted his head. "Most people already have." Behind him, a low hum filled the room. Not mechanical. Something older, like a sound made of memory. I hesitated, reached for the middle case, then stopped. What did I really remember about who I was trying to be? And what if the one I walked away from was closer to who I am? The man waited, unmoving. Then came the thought, crawling through my skull. What kind of life am I trying to re-enter? One I earned or one I abandoned? And if I've already lived a dozen other versions, is this one still mine to keep? I stepped back. "I don't want any of them," I said. He didn't flinch. "Then you'll stay here until you do." He handed me a boarding pass. It was blank. Just a time. Now. Behind me, the hallway doors had vanished. Only the suitcases remained. I followed the thought of Jorge Luis Borges, who once wrote, "We all walk through imaginary gardens with real toads in them. Memory is a garden like that." And I think I left too many versions of myself buried beneath the roots. So now I wait and try to remember which one of us wanted to leave in the first place. I've always found comfort in boarding passes. They make the world linear, departure, arrival, purpose. I like that. Until the night I found myself standing at an airport gate for a flight no one had ever scheduled. It was supposed to be a return. I hadn't been back to my hometown in over 12 years. A job had pulled me away, then a woman, then a silence that grew into something easier not to interrupt. My mother died 6 months ago. I never made the funeral. This was me making amends. That's what I told myself. The flight number on my digital boarding pass was 3877, gate 4. But the terminal screen said no such flight existed. I approached the counter. "There's no flight 3877, the agent said. I showed her my ticket. She frowned, typed something, then smiled, too slowly. "Ah, you've been reassigned," she said. "Please proceed to gate 14B. I blinked. "There is no 14B. "There is tonight." She turned away. I found it at the far end of an unused terminal wing. No signage, just a door without windows. An old metal placard above it read, "Departures only." Inside, the gate was dim. A small group waited, silent, unmoving. A woman stared at a dead screen. A man sat with his eyes shut, lips moving in prayer. I approached the agent. "Is this flight 3877? She scanned my ticket without looking up. "Welcome back." The plane was narrow, almost claustrophobic. No branding, no announcements, just boarding and silence. As I sat, the lights flickered. And then I saw him, 3 rows ahead, my brother, except he died in 2011. He didn't look at me, just stared ahead, hands on his knees like he was bracing for impact. The seat beside me remained empty, but something about the indentation in the cushion made me feel watched. I tried to breathe deeply, to tell myself I was hallucinating, exhausted, grieving late. The window showed nothing, not even cloud, just dark. An absence so complete it made my pupils dilate. A low chime echoed through the cabin, then screens came on. No movies, no maps, just looping videos, home footage I'd forgotten existed. My mother's hands, my father at the table, me, maybe 10 years old, crying in the backyard because my brother pushed me too hard on the swing. I remembered the cut, but not the look in his eyes after. The footage shifted, me again but older, college, an argument with a girl I can't name. I watched myself walk away, headphones in. She didn't follow. I never turned back. Why did I keep leaving? When did walking away become easier than forgiving or asking for it? The intercom clicked on. A voice, not a crew member, but one I knew. Mine. Recorded, warped, older. Some debts are round trip, some aren't. The man beside me, the one I thought was a stranger, turned his head. It was my father. He smiled sadly. "Didn't expect to see you just yet." "I'm not dead," I whispered. He didn't answer, just nodded slowly, as if neither of us had gotten that choice right. The cabin temperature dropped. A frost crawled along the window. Outside, vague figures moved against the dark, pale, flickering, walking beside the plane, staring in. The lights dimmed. Oxygen masks didn't fall. No instructions came, just silence. I stood. No one stopped me. I moved to the front of the plane, opened the cockpit door. No pilots, no controls, just another row of seats identical to the cabin behind. Then came a thought I couldn't silence. What if this isn't taking me anywhere? What if it's bringing me back to a part of myself I buried, thinking it was dead? I returned to my seat. The screen now showed a final clip, a voicemail I never sent. "Hey, Mom, I'm coming home. I think I'm ready." My mouth trembled. The landing gear dropped, but there was no runway, only a great black plane, lit by a single spotlight in the fog, waiting. When the doors opened, the passengers rose and left, one by one, wordless, as if they knew exactly what came next. I followed. Outside, the ground was soft, familiar. It smelled like cut grass and regret. A child's voice echoed in the fog. "You said you'd be back soon." I followed the thought of Leonard Cohen, who once sang, "You want it darker? We killed the flame." I never wanted it darker. I just kept closing my eyes. Now, I don't know if I'm returning or finally arriving. But either way, the flight was never scheduled. I never liked flying with checked baggage. Something about leaving pieces of yourself in someone else's hands. But this time, I had no choice. It wasn't clothes or books or tech gear. It was my father, or what was left of him. As I handed over the box at the security gate at LAX, the TSA officer asked what it contained. I told him truthfully, "My father's ashes." He barely glanced at me and waved me on. That moment stuck. My dad, reduced to a line on a form. Human remains. In the background, a song leaked through someone's earbuds. Familiar. Careful what you wish, you may regret it. Careful what you wish, you just might get it. Metallica, King Nothing. It felt too close, like a warning dressed up as rhythm. The urn was packed tightly in my carry-on, padded, sealed. Still, it felt like it pulsed. My father had asked to be returned to his birthplace, Juneau, Alaska. A final wish. I was 25. It felt too early to carry something this heavy. The gate at Alaska Airlines was nearly empty. The red-eye to Juneau had maybe 30 passengers. Most looked like locals or people running from something. I guess I fit in. I took 21A window. My bag rested above me, vibrating with tension I couldn't explain. As the aircraft lifted, I watched Los Angeles blur below me, city of noise and things left unsaid. 30 minutes in, I heard it. A knock, sharp. From the overhead, I stared upward. Another knock, louder, deliberate. Then a third. I pressed the call button. The attendant arrived, overly cheerful for 1:17 a.m. Something wrong? I think there's something moving in my bag. She leaned in. It's sealed up there. Could be pressure shifts. Nothing to worry about. Her eyes didn't match her smile. I tried to rest, but the air had a texture to it now, dry and heavy, like walking through smoke. My lungs tightened. I looked around. Every passenger seemed immobilized, eyes closed but not asleep, as if paused. I stood. The aisle felt longer than before. The cabin lights dimmed as I reached the overhead bin. My bag was unzipped. The urn was half out, cloth undone. I touched it. It was hot, vibrating. When I sat back down, the screen in front of me flickered on. Would he have wanted this? I didn't move. The screen shifted. Footage I'd never seen. My father in our old kitchen slicing garlic, humming low. Then him in a hospice bed, unshaven, eyes glassy. He looked into the lens and said, "You're not strong enough to see it through." My jaw tightened. I felt a heat rise in my throat. The intercom clicked. It was his voice. "You think carrying me fixes it?" I blinked hard. The passenger beside me, an old man, turned. Except he wasn't old. He was my father, my age. "You left," he said. "That's what you do." I recoiled. The air dropped 10 degrees. My breath came out in clouds. I walked to the galley. Empty, except for a flight attendant uniform draped over a chair, like shed skin. The overheads on the left side of the cabin were open, every bin empty. I returned to my seat. The urn now sat on the tray table, unlatched. Ash spilled outward, swirling in slow motion, like underwater smoke. Then the ash moved. A face emerged in the dust. Mine, then his, then both. A gust of wind hit me, nowhere for it to come from. The ash blew into my face, my mouth. I choked. I tasted salt and iron, a voice in my ear. You should have stayed. You should have held my hand. I pressed the call button. The screen replied, there is no crew. I looked around. Every passenger stared at me, eyes wide, reflective, empty. They all had his eyes. Did I wait too long? Was this redemption or sentence? Was I carrying a man? Or what guilt becomes when you let it sit too long? What's the price of silence when someone needed to hear you say goodbye? The lights cut. The floor vibrated. Then, above me, a hatch slid open. The sky, darker than night. The cabin filled with screaming wind. The ash rose. So did I. My belt unlatched on its own. I floated up, arms out. No one stopped me. I saw the faces of everyone I'd avoided, all of them rising with the dust. The clouds opened. Below, mountains, the Mendenhall Glacier, my father's birthplace. The sky swallowed me. I followed the thought of Metallica, who sang, "Where's your crown, King Nothing?" My father was a quiet monarch. He ruled with silence, expected nothing, and died with everything unsaid. I brought him home, but too late. Maybe not for him, but for me. I don't know if we landed. I only know I never touched the ground again. I've listened to the last moments of more people than I've loved. That's the job. Civil aviation accident investigation. You go in after the smoke clears, when the bodies have names but no faces left. You sit in a sterile room with a headset and a voice recorder. You press play, you write a report, you try not to picture it. The call came in at 2:14 a.m. A black box had been recovered in Coral Springs, just north of Miami. Flight number, unknown. Tail number, unregistered. No distress signal, no prior flight plan. Just a wreck in the fog and a CVR, cockpit voice recorder, miraculously intact. They wanted me because I specialize in audio reconstruction. I said yes because saying no doesn't stop the next crash. They shipped the recorder to Washington, to our lab. The unit was scuffed but intact. No fire damage. I ran a spectrum analysis. Clean. No corruption. The first line of audio was a breath. Deep. Nervous. Then a voice. Altitude 290. Correcting course. Headwinds increasing. Male. Calm. Young. Slight accent. American, maybe? Something in my stomach twisted. I knew that voice. I scrubbed the clip backward, listened again. The voice gave coordinates, described cloud cover, made a joke about turbulence. Feels like the sky's trying to throw me out. My hand shook. It was my voice, but it couldn't be. I've never flown a plane in my life, never sat in a cockpit. I ran a voice print comparison against my own interview recordings. 97.4% match. I played more. Static. Then panic. System failure. Warning light. Manual override not responding. Losing altitude. Christ, what is that outside? The sound of something heavy hitting the fuselage. Screaming metal. Breathing. Fast. A whisper. I'm not alone here. The words weren't meant for the recorder. They were for him, for me. Inserted section begins here. I paused the playback and just sat there. My hands weren't cold, but I noticed I was clenching them so tightly they'd gone numb. Outside the lab window, a jet trailed through a pale gray sky. Silent. I caught myself whispering the Beatles under my breath. Yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away. Funny how that song always surfaces when I'm falling apart. I thought I'd known who I was. A technician, a listener, a witness to the last seconds of strangers. But now I wasn't sure I'd ever been a stranger to any of them. And God help me, maybe I never wanted to know. There's a line by Milan Kundera that popped into my head out of nowhere. The struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. I didn't remember where I read it. Maybe a quote someone pinned on the break room board years ago. But now, it hit like a warning. The spectrogram was still active. It pulsed in waves, alive. I rewound 5 seconds. Hit play again. The voice, my voice, was humming a tune, not words, just the melody. Familiar. Then a breath. I think I'm losing time. The voice said it like someone noticing a nosebleed. Almost casual. I stared at the waveform. "What are you trying to tell me?" I whispered aloud. I didn't realize my supervisor was behind me until she said, "What did you say?" Nothing. Sorry, just talking to the system." But I wasn't. When was the last time I flew? I tried to remember. A trip to Toronto? No, wait, that was canceled. It must have been, God, what year was it? I couldn't place it. The plane, the seat, the arrival, a blank space where a landing should have been. Had I ever landed at all? The waveform shifted again without input. A faint whisper bled into the room like air escaping a sealed door. "You forgot something. Come back." I blinked hard. "Who's speaking?" No answer, just the hum of the lab. My reflection in the screen, sweat on my brow now. My own eyes unfamiliar. Am I the echo, I thought, or the voice still traveling? How many final moments have I archived without realizing one of them was mine? Inserted section ends here. The spectrogram glitched as if the audio was still being recorded. The waveform kept generating even with playback paused. I pulled the hard drive, disconnected the power. The speakers kept playing. Now the voice was pleading, "Please tell them I tried. Please tell them it wasn't my fault." I backed away from the console. My supervisor entered. "You all right?" I nodded too quickly. "Any idea who the pilot was?" she asked. I lied. Not yet. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cloud bank, heard the screech, felt the nose of a plane dipping toward something that wasn't ground, wasn't sky. I played the file again. I shouldn't have. The new segment had audio I hadn't heard before. Flight path initiated by secondary override. Recorder manually activated at 0436. That was the exact time I had started listening earlier. The voice said, "You're not listening, are you? You never did. Not when it mattered." I jumped back. The room was cold. My reflection in the dark monitor stared back, but his mouth was moving, and I wasn't speaking. Was this some kind of hallucination? A stress response? What would you do if the last voice of a dead man sounded like you, but knew things you didn't remember? What if you were the crash, still in progress? The final audio file appended itself to the system without input. It was a woman's voice. "Carlos, it's Mom. You said you'd call when you landed. Please, just tell me you're okay." The timestamp was today. From an unknown number. I haven't flown in years. But now, every time I hear a plane overhead, I wonder if it's me in there, screaming into a recorder that no one will believe. I've always hated connections, not the kind you miss, the kind that drags. Those 4-hour layovers where the air is stale, your body aches from waiting, and time feels like a lie. Airports are liminal zones, places where nothing begins and nothing ends, just a stretch of non-existence masquerading as travel. That's probably why I didn't question it when the screens glitched and told me to proceed to Concourse D. I was in Terminal 3 of Miami International, en route to Quito. My gate had changed twice already. I checked the app, the monitors. Everything pointed to D27. But when I got to Concourse D, I couldn't find the gate. The signs ended at D20. A cleaning staff member told me to just follow the blue tiles. That didn't make sense, but I was exhausted, and something about the way he said it felt like instruction, not suggestion. I followed the tiles. They led past a locked vending machine, a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only," and a section where the lights buzzed too loudly. No other passengers, no announcements, just echoes of wheels on tile and the drag of my own backpack. Then the lights changed. Colder, lower, my phone lost signal. The air smelled like freezer-burned meat and bleach. I turned a corner. No more Concourse D. Just a long hallway with unmarked doors. One was open. I stepped inside. The room looked like a makeshift detention area. Cheap folding chairs, metal bars, a screen showing flight paths that didn't exist. And behind a half-drawn curtain, stretcher. Something lay under the sheet. I backed out, or tried to. The hallway had changed. Now it sloped downward. I started to feel dizzy, unsteady. Then came the smell, decomposition masked by chemical sweeteners. I covered my mouth and pushed forward deeper into the bowels of the airport. A voice came over the intercom, raspy, glitched. Baggage left behind will be processed. I opened another door, rows of bodies, not on stretchers, on the floor, cold, piled like forgotten luggage, skin gray, some with tags on their toes, others still holding passports. They weren't recent. And yet, none showed signs of decay. In the corner, a small child sat upright, eyes open, unmoving. I blinked. She was gone. On the wall, a map of the Americas, places crossed out in red. The words "non-admitted" repeated like static. I ran. Every hallway led to more of it. Forgotten terminals, bins of confiscated phones, showers with chains instead of curtains, a TV playing a looping message. Your status is being reviewed. Please do not resist. I screamed. No echo. A corridor of one-way mirrors reflected nothing. At some point, I passed a room that showed footage of myself, still at the terminal gate, waiting, eating chips, staring at a screen. I was still there. So who was I now? When did I leave the real airport? Did I ever board the plane I bought a ticket for? Are there layers to this place? Versions beneath the public version? How many people disappear in transit without ever technically leaving the building? A speaker crackled again, louder this time. If you see something, say nothing. I collapsed near an exit sign, but when I pushed the door, there was only more hallway and more blue tiles. I follow the thought of Franz Kafka, who once wrote, "It is often safer to be in chains than to be free." Airports were built to move people, but some of us are held in transit forever, not because we can't leave, but because someone decided we shouldn't arrive.